Last night, while most of the world was asleep, Iran launched. Not one wave, not two, 9. Separate. Attack waves in a single day. Sirens tore across Tel Aviv. In some neighborhoods, the warning systems failed completely. Residents had less than 90 seconds to find cover. Elderly couples couldn't cross a room in time. Families with small children couldn't reach their shelter before the warheads detonated. This morning, buildings are gutted, vehicles thrown across roads, shrapnel found embedded in walls, parked cars, and pavement across residential streets in central Israel. Israel's own health ministry confirmed nearly 150 people injured by Iranian missiles and drones in a single 24-hour period. And yet, most major channels this morning led with something else entirely. So today, we cover everything. The weapons Iran deployed, why Israel's defense shield is mathematically cracking, what Russia is quietly delivering, and why this war is already hitting your fuel prices, your grocery bill, and your economy, no matter where you live. Let's go. The opening move in last night's campaign. Arash 2 suicide drones launched directly at the port of Haifa. If you haven't heard of these before, you need to understand what they are. Because these are not reconnaissance drones. These are not drones that come back to base. The Arash 2 is built for one purpose only, to fly directly into a target and explode. Here is what we know about this weapon. Range, 1,500 to 2,000 kilometers. Carries a large explosive warhead. Designed to target radar systems, ports, and strategic infrastructure. Flies low enough that certain defense layers struggle to track it consistently. Iranian sources, through Tasnim news agency, claimed successful hits on several sensitive and strategic locations, specifically emphasizing Haifa Port. Haifa is not a random target. It is Israel's largest northern commercial port, handling a major share of the country's imports. Hitting it sends both a military and an economic message simultaneously. Now, here is where Iran's drone capability gets significantly more dangerous. And this involves Russia directly. Western intelligence, confirmed and published through the Financial Times on March 25th, revealed that Russia has been actively delivering drones to Iran since early March. These are called Jiran 2 drones. Russian-manufactured upgrades of Iran's own Shahed 136 design. Nearly 90% of all Shahed-type drone assembly now takes place inside Russia. The production line Moscow originally built using Iranian technology during the Ukraine war has now reversed direction. Finished drones are flowing back into Iran. Analyst Antonio Giustozzi, cited in that Financial Times report, made this point clearly. Iran at this stage does not need more drones. What Iran is specifically pursuing are the Russian upgrades. Improved engines, better navigation systems, and anti-jamming technology built into the Garand variants. Once enough of these arrive, analysts fully expect Iran to reverse engineer those improvements into its own domestic production line. Ukraine separately stated that Russia is providing Iran with intelligence support. A Wall Street Journal report cited Moscow as having also shared satellite imagery with Iran, though Reuters noted it could not independently verify that specific claim. What is confirmed? Israel struck Iran's Caspian seaport of Bandar Anzali, which U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth publicly identified as the primary corridor for Russian military equipment flowing into Iran. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov called the reports lies. In the same statement, he confirmed Russia is continuing an active dialogue with Iran's leadership. Iron Dome intercepts at night, multiple contrails crossing the sky, some missiles breaking through, ground-level explosions visible. Now, here is the part of this story being reported incorrectly or incompletely almost everywhere you look. Israeli officials keep going on television and quoting a 92% interception rate. On the surface, that sounds like a success, a shield holding firm. Let's do the actual math right now, together. Iran has fired, according to tracked military data, over 440 ballistic missiles at Israel since this escalation began. 92% interception rate. That 8% that got through, that is 35 ballistic missiles that reached their targets inside one of the most densely populated countries on Earth. 35 direct hits is not a rounding error. It is not an acceptable margin. It is a national emergency being dressed up in a statistic. And here is the specific reason that number keeps climbing and will keep getting worse unless something changes fundamentally about Israel's defensive architecture. Nearly half of all missiles Iran has launched are carrying cluster munitions. And this changes everything about how missile defense actually works. Standard intercept logic. One warhead, one flight path, one interception solution. Track it, calculate trajectory, fire interceptor, problem solved. A cluster warhead operates on a completely different principle. According to Israeli military officials, these warheads break apart at approximately 7 to 10 kilometers altitude and release roughly 24 individual submunitions. Each one falls on its own independent arc. Each one carries lethal explosive force. Each one is now its own separate interception problem. One Israeli security official, speaking to financial outlet Calculist, was blunt about the problem. The real solution is the A3 system, designed to destroy missiles outside the atmosphere, far above populated areas, before submunitions can separate and deploy. Expanding David's sling into a role it was never built for does not change the physics. You need exo-atmospheric interception. Anything less means debris, shrapnel, and unexploded submunitions falling on residential streets. Here is the dimension of this war that almost nobody in mainstream coverage is addressing. The economics of the weapons exchange itself. A David Sling interceptor, $320,000 per unit. An Arrow 3 interceptor, approximately $650,000 per unit. An Iranian ballistic missile costs Iran between $200,000 and $500,000 to produce. Now let's address what reportedly came out of a leaked Israeli cabinet meeting recording, because this changes the picture significantly. According to multiple Israeli media outlets reporting on this recording, IDF Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi told cabinet members directly that the military is operating under extreme stress and approaching operational limits it may not be able to sustain. Israel is simultaneously running active military operations across Gaza, Lebanon, the West Bank, Syria, and now directly inside Iran. Reserve forces, which form the absolute backbone of IDF warfighting capacity, are mentally and physically exhausted after extended deployment cycles with insufficient rest rotations between operations. Halevi reportedly warned that reserve forces may not hold much longer under this operational tempo, that the situation is nearing, in the reported phrasing, a breaking point. Is a chief of staff raising concerns in a private cabinet meeting the same as the military actually collapsing? No. Military commanders raise worst-case scenarios in private settings precisely so political leaders understand real constraints before making decisions. But the fact that this recording leaked and that Israeli media outlets are reporting on it openly tells you something concrete about the atmosphere inside the Israeli security establishment right now. The pressure is real. It is documented, and it is coming from every direction simultaneously. Iranian media and officials, reported through Tasnim news agency and picked up broadly by Al Jazeera, claimed Iran has over 1 million fighters mobilized and ready. The specific message directed at the United States was, "Step into this battlefield, and we will teach you a lesson your generations will not forget." But there is no confirmed evidence that all 1 million are actively positioned in combat deployments right now. Military analysts broadly characterize this claim as strategic deterrence messaging, a psychological pressure campaign designed to make the United States seriously reconsider any ground escalation scenario. But here is the historical context that makes it impossible to simply dismiss as empty talk. During the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, Iran, with a population significantly smaller than today, mobilized millions of fighters, including large numbers of civilians who volunteered or were organized into defensive units. With a much larger population base today, large-scale mobilization at the numbers Iran is claiming is not theoretically impossible. Iran's history demonstrates they have done it before. The United States, for comparison, is not deploying millions of troops into this theater. Current U.S. deployments in the region consist of smaller, rapid response units, most prominently the 82nd Airborne Division, positioned for contingency response rather than full-scale ground engagement. Reports are emerging that U.S. troops stationed in Gulf countries are avoiding military bases and instead living in civilian hotels. Reports are emerging that U.S. troops stationed in Gulf countries are avoiding military bases and instead living in civilian hotels. The reason? Military bases have become too high a target profile given the current level of Iranian attack activity in the region. And now some hotels are reportedly refusing bookings from U.S. military personnel entirely because their presence creates a target attraction risk for the hotel itself and surrounding civilian areas. Iranian officials have taken this situation and publicly accused the United States of using civilians as human shields, framing U.S. troops staying in civilian hotels as deliberate endangerment of non-military populations. The irony of that accusation, given the cluster warheads landing on residential Tel Aviv, is not lost on anyone paying attention. So where does all of this leave us? The war is no longer, in any honest analysis, a bilateral exchange between Iran and Israel. It has become a multi-front regional conflict with a global economic blast radius. The Gulf states are in it. The global energy system is in it. Every country that buys food, fuel, or fertilizer is in it, whether they chose to be or not. Iran shows no public trust in the United States or its diplomatic process. Israel is under documented internal military pressure across simultaneously open fronts. Regional actors, Hezbollah, the Houthis, other axis of resistance groups, are escalating their involvement with each passing week. Russia is quietly supplying better weapons. And the diplomacy is a room where every party is telling a different story. The question now is not whether this war is serious. That answer is settled. The question is, what happens next? Is a ground escalation actually coming? Is there a real deal forming behind closed doors that nobody is publicly admitting to? And what happens to the global economy and to every ordinary person caught in the blast radius if this goes further before it resolves? Let me know what you think in the comments right now. I read every single one. Subscribe if you want to stay on top of this story as it moves, because it is moving fast, and I will be here with every major update as it comes in.